It was a Monday like any other on the surface, yet beneath the ordinary hum of Tucson's desert evening, something extraordinary had happened. The 5 p.m. ransom deadline had come and gone 4 hours ago. No wallet address appeared. No proof of life photo arrived. No messages had been released to the public. Just silence. And in that silence, amidst the tension and uncertainty, one man's words pierced through, offering a perspective few could have anticipated. Tom Brokaw, 86 years old, the voice that had defined American network news for decades, who had anchored through wars, elections, crises, and the collective heartbreak of 9/11, finally spoke. Not on television, not in an op-ed, not for the public record. He spoke quietly, deliberately, to a small circle of 8 former colleagues and longtime friends in his New York home. No cameras, no microphones, no press, just chairs pulled into a circle, the scent of coffee and Brokaw, steady and precise, ready to share a story he had carried for decades. One of those 8 reached out at 7:14 p.m. Eastern and asked if I wanted to know what was said. I did, and what follows is not rumor, not speculation. It is what Tom Brokaw shared in that living room. A candid, deeply human insight into Savannah Guthrie, her mother Nancy, and the invisible forces that shaped the way Savannah moves through crisis. Tom began without preamble. "I've known Savannah since she was the new kid on the 4th floor at 30 Rock," he said. "She was 30, maybe 31. Hungry, polished, polite to a fault. But there was something else. Something I recognized immediately because I'd seen it before in others who grew up under a very particular kind of parent." He paused, letting the weight of his observations settle. She carried her mother around with her like a second heartbeat. Not sentimental, not a call mom every Sunday kind of love. I mean control. Absolute control. Nancy Guthrie never gave it up, even when she wasn't physically present. Savannah carried it everywhere, a constant pulse she couldn't ignore. And that, he said, is the lens through which you must view every decision Savannah has ever made, every moment of poise and restraint you see on screen today. She didn't raise her children by being soft, Brokaw continued. She raised them by being unbreakable, by teaching them that the world punishes weakness and that only discipline, only resilience is rewarded. Savannah learned that lesson earlier and deeper than most children learn anything in their lives. Then, he shared a memory no one in the room had heard before. When Savannah was offered the co-anchor chair on the Today Show, the biggest promotion of her career, she didn't call her agent. She didn't call her husband. She called her mother. "Mom, they want me to co-anchor the Today Show." And Nancy's reply? "Fine, but don't let it go to your head. Don't let them see you sweat. You're there to work, not to be liked." Tom looked around the circle, eyes steady. "Savannah told me that story with pride, not resentment. That is the economy they've lived in since she was a girl. Approval comes for performance, not for feeling. Love is proven through action, not need. And that economy," Brokaw explained, "is what Savannah is operating under now, in the midst of one of the most harrowing moments of her life. Watch how she speaks to the camera. Watch every word, every pause, every gesture. Thank the public first. Acknowledge her mother. Reference the ransom reports. Only then make the plea. That is not instinct. That is choreography. New York taught her that. And right now, she is executing that choreography under unimaginable pressure." One of the attendees asked, cautiously, "Do you think Nancy would disapprove if Savannah fell apart on camera?" "I think she would be appalled," Brokaw said without hesitation. "Not because she doesn't love her daughter, she does, but because she spent decades teaching her the opposite. That moment when you let emotion take over, you lose. Nancy never lost. Not when her husband died. Not when life knocked her down. Not when raising 3 kids alone. And Savannah has absorbed that code completely. She cries privately very rarely. And when she does, she stops herself within seconds, wipes her eyes, smiles, moves on." He added almost painfully, "I've seen her cry exactly twice. Once for her father-in-law, once for her own daughters facing hardship. Both times, she contained herself immediately. That isn't strength, it's conditioning. And right now, that conditioning is the only thing keeping her upright. But it's also what could eventually break her. Brokaw then shifted to the recent videos Savannah released during the crisis. The February 7th plea. We will pay. Watch how she says it. Like she's reading terms of surrender in a treaty negotiation. No tremor, no pleading. Just clarity, resolve, dignity. That is how she sounds when reporting to command. Even when command is missing, even when it's in danger, she is still following orders. Another person asked quietly, can she keep this up? Another week? Another month? Tom shook his head. I don't know. She's already running on fumes. You can see it in her eyes. The light is dimming, but she won't let it go out. Not yet, because letting it go out means admitting she can't fix this. Admitting she can't fix, this means she has failed her mother. And that is a verdict she has spent her entire life avoiding. He shared a brief, devastating memory from a decade ago. Savannah was going through a personal stretch. She came in early one morning, whispered to me, I called Mom last night. I told her I was struggling. And she added, you've handled worse. Handle this, so I'm handling it. And then she went on air to interview a grieving parent like nothing had happened. That is who she is. That is who Nancy made her. And right now, he said, leaning back, that is who is negotiating with a kidnapper, managing national attention, comforting her own children, and breathing, all while believing that if she stops handling it perfectly, she loses the only love that has ever mattered. He didn't rush the room with this first wave of memories. He let them settle. Then he shifted to the specific timeline of the crisis. Think about February 1st, he said. Not the sheriff's timeline, not the public narrative, but the one Savannah and her siblings controlled. Sunday, the house is found empty. Monday, search ramps up. FBI joins. National attention explodes. Still nothing from her. Tuesday, ransom notes hit TMZ and local stations. Bitcoin demands circulate. Still nothing public from Savannah or the siblings. Wednesday, the first video drops. Notice the timing. Late Wednesday evening. Not before. That delay is Nancy. Savannah waited until she could deliver perfectly. Thank the public first. Frame her mother as strong, faithful, light-filled. Address the captor with dignity instead of desperation. That is not instinct. That is training. He returned to the February 7th video. When she says, we will pay, she looked straight into the camera. For words. No quiver. No pleading tone. Calm, deliberate commitment. Not the way a typical daughter would speak, offering millions to save her mother. That is how a soldier or lawyer reports to command. And she is giving that command to herself. Stay in control. Don't break. Don't show weakness. Tom leaned forward. She is terrified of falling short. Part of her still believes her mother is watching, grading her. Not supernaturally, not spiritually, but in that way a teacher watches a student take a final exam. Did you hold it together? Represent the family? Stay composed. He recounted another story from 15 years ago. Savannah, early in her career, faced a public stumble. A story she worked on didn't hold up, the network took a hit, and for 2 weeks she defended, explained, apologized. On air, flawless. Off air, she finally allowed herself a few tears. Then she called her mother. Nancy's response? You made a mistake. You fix mistakes. You don't wallow, so I'm fixing it. She wasn't asking for comfort, Brokaw said. She was reporting progress, showing herself, and me, that she was still following the code. She returned to work like nothing happened. That is who is standing in front of cameras right now, offering millions to save her mother. That is what we're seeing. Another attendee asked quietly, what happens if Nancy doesn't come home? Tom paused. Savannah will not collapse like most people would. She won't scream. She won't fall apart on camera. She will thank everyone who helped. Speak at a memorial with perfect clarity. Hug her children. Go back to work. And she will carry the verdict inside her forever. That she wasn't enough to bring her mother back. That she failed the final assignment. That weight will be heavier than any grief the rest of us can imagine. But he softened, almost whispering, If Nancy comes home, God willing, someone needs to tell Savannah what her mother never could. You don't have to earn this. You never did. You were enough the day you were born. You are enough now. You don't have to perform anymore. Brokaw asked the room to keep what he'd shared close. Let the search continue. Let the investigators work. Let the deadline pass without turning this into another news cycle. But when this is over, the deeper story needs to be told. Not the crime, the human story, the cost to a daughter who spent 46 years trying to be unbreakable for the woman who taught her breaking was never allowed. The cost of learning that strength is the price of love. He ended with one last thought. And when Nancy walks through that door, let Savannah finally hear the words she's waited a lifetime to hear. You did enough. You always did enough. You can rest now. Tonight, the desert outside Tucson is cold. The deadline has passed. The silence continues. But somewhere in that silence, a daughter is still listening for her mother's voice, the voice that guided, judged, loved, and demanded everything since she was a child. Tom Brokaw, 86 years old, finally spoke aloud what he had seen for decades. Savannah Guthrie is not just trying to bring her mother home. She is trying to preserve the only version of love she has ever known, the one that says strength is the price of belonging. And that lesson, ironclad and unbreakable, is both the anchor keeping her from drowning and the chain that may never let her fully breathe. If Nancy returns, let us all surround Savannah with the one thing she has spent her lifetime chasing: permission to lay down her armor, to stop performing, to be human, to simply be her mother's daughter, not her mother's masterpiece. Because at the end of the day, as Tom Brokaw finally reminded us, she has always been enough.